Today I'm going to show you how I make these small fire starters. I use a tray that has 6 by 8 trays, places. So 48 we'll make in this one. I start out with chunks of reclaimed wax. I melt it in a big crock pot. I use kiln dried wood chips, and I've got candle wax coated wooden wicks that I'll stick in the starter at the right time. So let's show you how we do this. So we get the wax melted to about the right temperature, so it's nice and liquidy. And we pour about half full in a row of 8 here to get going. We showed in another video, the large fire starters, they take a lot more wax, they burn longer. And on the small ones, you can't do too many at once until the molten wax starts solidifying. So you got to limit how many you can do at once. And you just take enough wood chips to basically fill it to the top. It's nothing too scientific or exact about it. It's a combination of the wax and the wood chips that makes them burn as well as they do. And in another video I showed, you can watch that if you haven't seen it already. These small ones on a timed video that you'll see, they'll burn for right around a half an hour, some more, but on average they burn a half an hour. So we got the wood chips in, then we go back and go till we just get it flush with the top. Some melted wax. And the thing about this process is that the wax will absorb into the wood chips some, but not a lot. So if you wait a minute or so, you can see that it goes down just a little bit because it's absorbed, not much. So I just try to fill it, maybe slightly overfill it. And then what I do is I come back and put on just a little more on the top, and this helps when I stick in the wood wick in a minute. It helps it hold straight up, stay in position. So anytime within, a minute or so after pouring it, you want to stick the wood wax in. You just kind of, wax coated wood wick. You just work it in, and it should stay in position. Sometimes I have to come back and add a couple more chips of wood just to get it to stay straight. And that's the first row of 8 done. And what I do is I'll look at them after a minute or 2 or 3. Keep watching them. Just take a quick glance. What I do is I make sure that the wick hasn't fallen over too much. Like this one, you see it's trying to fall over, so just add a little bit more on these. They don't have to be straight up and down. I prefer that they are. Just look better. And then we start on the next row. So there'll be people who watch this and say, well, this can be a dangerous process. Well, it turns out I've got a smoke detector right straight above, about 4 feet above this tray. So it lets me know if I'm not around, if if the wax is getting too hot, if it's starting to smoke. It's never been a problem. I always, safety first. And about 6-7 feet away over on the other side, I have a fire extinguisher. Fortunately, I've never had to use that, knock on wood. And I got plenty of wood around here, right? And like you'll see, some of these, I'll get pieces of wood chips that fall into empty cups here. It doesn't matter because once the wax gets in it, they'll be fine. Everything will be working. And some people will say, well, what about when you grab the wood chips with your bare hands? Don't you get splinters? I've been doing this quite a while. I think I got one splinter that was in my finger for about 10 seconds. I just looked at it, took it out. It didn't hurt. So no, it is not a problem. And the second row is ready for the topping. And grab a handful of wicks. You can see some of these are stuck together. It's when I dip them in a vat of candle wax, they stick together. Makes it much easier for lighting because they're a lower temperature burning wax than is this reclaimed wax that I use for the fire starters themselves. This one's going to need a little bit more to hold it up straight. And we look at the other row and they look pretty good. Still straight. So we're ready for the third row. I've tried doing this different ways. I initially tried just covering the whole tray with wood chips and then pouring wax in. That was not a successful way because you didn't really get the wax in the bottom of the container, which is really what you need. And so, trial and error, I find this way works pretty well. If someone has a suggestion on how to do it better, I'm always open to improvement. So if you got an idea of what I should be doing, let me know. There's a few secrets to this, so you won't see me tell you what they are, but I guess the biggest secret that I'll tell you is that I just love to do it. I have, I don't know, a weird sleeping schedule. I can't always sleep when I want, and the good thing is I can, if I can't sleep, I just get up and do this, and I feel like I'm productive. And the first row is still, the wick will move enough. If it's, if anything's starting to fall over, I just straighten it up. there trying to fall over. We'll fix it. And a couple more. Look like they're trying to lay down on the job. We'll fix them. And it's off to the next row. Another thought I had is some safety conscious people may say, you know, that large crock pot you're using, the owner's manual instructions tell you not to use for melting wax, and I do read instructions as a last resort. Actually, sometimes I follow the instructions, but not always, obviously. I'm not following the instructions because I am melting wax in it. I just needed something that held enough volume of wax to do these mini production runs that I do. I initially bought used crock pots at secondhand stores when I was first doing this, and they didn't hold near as much wax, and so it wasn't as efficient or productive for me to have multiple smaller crock pot supplying my melted wax. And I've also looked at other ideas on how to get my melted wax from a crock pot or whatever device into the tray, how to productionize this. It's not as easy as you might think. The problem with having any delivery system out of a crock pot or other device to get it into these trays, you really can't have a very long hose or spigot, because as soon as the wax starts cooling, and once it's no longer heated in the pot itself, it's going to solidify. And so you can imagine if you had a very long hose or anything that was delivering, that you were getting the melted wax from there into the tray, it could easily clog up after a short time if you didn't always keep it hot. So I find just ladling it in is the easiest method for me at this point. I may find a better way sometime in the future. For now, this works. And again, I look back at the other rows here, and this first row, it's, I can still move it a little bit, but it's almost solidified from its liquid stage. 2 more rows to go on this, and we'll be done with this tray. If you haven't watched the other timed video, I think I may have mentioned it already, but these burn easily a half an hour, and the larger ones will burn for an hour and 15 minutes, and it's obviously a function of bigger volume of wax in the wood chips. It's just going to burn longer. So it depends what you're using it for. If you just have a smaller timing need for a shorter burn time, you would get some of these smaller fire starters. If you wanted something to make sure it didn't go out, you would get a bigger one. There we go. I suppose one other hazard is you can get burned by the wax. I keep it at a temperature. It's the thermostat on the thing is set at currently at right around 250 degrees. So if you get some on you, you'll know it. It's not going to leave a burn, but I'm very careful. I guess if there's one downside to this whole fire starter making operation that I have, it is that you get it on your fingers and it takes, takes a little bit of time until you get it off. You can use scrubbing soap type stuff or whatever, but it literally takes a day or so until you have whatever's on you off. The biggest problem though itself is when I get it on my clothes, there's really no good way to get it off. It's once the hot wax gets on your clothes, it's there, and there's methods to get it off, but nothing is 100% ineffective. And so I try to avoid that as much as possible, or just designate certain clothes for this pouring fire starters, because you're going to ruin your clothes eventually if you're not too careful. So there's that. And then it takes a while, obviously, for these to cool. Once they're cool, then I release them, dump them out here on the tray. I'll show you that at the very end. And we're almost done with this tray. Give it a little overfill. And the last little bit, just to make it easy for the wood. Wick to stay in place. So again, I look back at the other rows. They all look pretty straight up and down on the wood wick. So this has been pretty easy tray. As you can tell, I try to get the wick in the middle of little round opening. But with all the wood chips on top, it's not always possible to tell exactly where the center is. That one needs just a little bit more. And there you have it. You can see. And again, this one here, I try to move it. It won't move. If I just wiggle it, I mean, I could push it obviously and knock it over. I'm not going to, but when the wax is hot, they move easily. And that's it. So once these are completely back to room temperature, we'll knock it out and you'll see what they look like falling out of the tray.